Hello, I just recorded it and then I got into a long rant, so I'll just try and keep it short. Naology. Naology is essentially the study of sacred buildings. The term, so John Dudley, 1846, Naology on the treatise of the origin, progress, symbolic import of the sacred structures of the most eminent nations and ages. I'm going to put the link in the description, so you can end the video right here and find the link. Now, just a few important thoughts on it. This is an important book. Firstly, it's from 1846, so you need to take it that it was written at the time and put it in context. Don't be too harsh, because I'm sure in 170 years from now, they're going to look back at us and think we were quite quaint. But, where are we? Naology by John Dudley. It's a book on sacred structures, sacred architecture. It is quite long, 677 pages. If you've seen anything that I've done in the past, very interested in ancient architecture across time, across the world, because it was written by in Europe at a Christian time, but it does go into Hindu, Mesoamerican, ancient Greek, Egyptian, and other times as well. And there are a few interesting parts. No way you could cover all of it in a short video, so I'm just going to... where are we? So it begins mentioning the Boas and Yakim, and how this is a similar theme. And basically how these ancient... Okay, no one hath seen God at any time. So no one has seen God. Why the deity should thus be invisible appears in the following declaration made by Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ. God is a spirit, spirit in mind, and mind as well as thought, propensity to action, can only be seen in the outward visible act, which ensures from the exercise of these faculties. So basically you can't see God. Now this is not pure to Christian doctrine, it's also to others that these things are beyond our view, but that the temple should represent the same theme. And but also chapter 1 goes into that a temple should be a model of the world. Again, if you have to, it will take a long time to go through all of this. So just again, so whether it's ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, others, you see the same, or cathedrals, Christian cathedrals, even in Islamic mosques. Now, for instance, a few years ago, I found one of the oldest surviving copies of the Quran. A large part of it was to do with architecture. The same measures you'll find in Masonic temples, cathedrals, ancient temples, ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia. Also in Mesoamerica, you find the same themes, the same sacred numbers, which are so important to geometry, astronomy, arithmetic, and music. And even so it's not just the measures, it's also the proportions of the temples keep reflecting these very important numbers. There are a few interesting parts in here. Now, for instance, I'm going to mention the Shasta, or the Vasta Shastru is this, some believe it could be up to 6,000 years old, this ancient Hindu text on architecture and on design and town planning. You'll see the same in Shesset in Egypt, and the stretching the cord ceremony, or the Roman system of defining the axis of a city as well as a temple. Also, okay, yeah, that could be a long talk. Now, Mount Meru again is a symbol, the center of the world. Not so long ago, I did a series on the omphalos stones, or the navel, so belly button, the navel, the center of the world. They'll mention this in here as well. How again, this is a constant across cultures. Sure, it's somewhere here. We'll mention omphalos stones, navel stones, or ben stones as they were referred to in Egypt. So, and that's not an ancient concept. It's still in modern cities as well, where you'll have like a milestone, which is at the center of a city from where all the city measurements are measured. So when you're driving along the road, you'll see it's, whether you're in America or here in Australia or England, you're driving along, it'll say it's 42 miles or kilometers to London, or it's 42 miles or 56 miles to New York. Well, what does that mean? Well, there's actually like a special point in the city from where all the measures are designed from. Um, because, for instance, New York is a large city. Where is the center? Where do they measure that from? When they say 52 or 46 or 87 miles or whatever, well, that's the center of the world. That's an omphalos stone or a benben stone, which is so important for any civilization to establish these things, to get coherent measures. You need to know how far these things are apart. Now, have I passed it? Yeah, this is a long text, and it does cover so much of these other aspects: symbolic, measurement, proportions. And it's also worth mentioning because it is a bit, okay, again, so the omphalos or the navel stone or omphalos, benben stone in Egypt, the center of the world or the center of the city, which is again a very important concept in any civilization. Weights and measures, you have to arrange your city, you have to arrange your temples, the connections between the Greek and so Greeks, Egyptians, all the ancient cultures of the world, and how that also applies to modern European, or you wouldn't call the great cathedrals modern by. It is also here worth mentioning because it, each to his own. Yggdrasil or Yggdrasil, the tree at the center of the world that holds up the sky. Now that's often used and abused by Eric Dubé. This guy is a liar extraordinaire, but apparently So this is just a tendency you have. People on the internet, they make a viewpoint and then they lie about it, and so far beneath as heaven is above the earth, such is the distance to gloomy Tartarus. Have I passed it? Now, for instance, because like even in ancient texts, not just the scientific ones. Now I might have passed it. So here he mentions the importance of the sacred temples being the sacred mount, center of the world, the abode of the gods. But so, for instance, here he brings up the Roman poet Ovid, and you'll often hear these, Eric Douchebag and this other stuff. Yeah. There we go. So Ovid. Then I, of older globe and shapeless mass, a face and limbs worthy of a god regained. And it goes on the same. So the ball-like earth by no support upheld hangs vast for weight in air suffused beneath. So Ovid and these ancient people, and that's why the pyramid is a representation of the oblate spheroid of the earth, was not only well known in a symbolic, poetic sense. They clearly wrote this. This is, again, just another sort of bugbear. I shouldn't get into that whole, because that's, you give them oxygen, but that's just, it's built on lies. Let's just be, anyway, this very important, very interesting text because it connects the science, the symbols, to these very important temples. So whether it's ancient India, Mesoamerica, Greece, Egypt, or the great cathedrals, are embedded with this very important knowledge. Okay, the horse of seven heads, a symbol of the set. Yeah, okay, that's something to do. Tortoise. Okay, you never stop learning with this stuff. That's what's so wonderful about it. It's always something new to learn. That has to do with Shesset of Egyptian. Okay, I've got to get, what page is that? 34. I'll come back to that. Anyway, link to download this is in the description. Very interesting text in so many other ways. I'll also try and remember, I should put in the 10 books of architecture from Vitruvius, where he describes lifting machines, ancient chemistry, astronomy, the symbols, town plannings and design, the type of stuff which you'll never find selectively mentioned amongst some, let's just call them gatekeepers of the alternative. They will freely quote the Plato and Atlantis, but they very reticent to include other ancient texts which doesn't support their. Okay, that's something else. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to give that. I'm not going to waste time on that. I'm just going to keep going with what I'm doing and providing. Anyway, there you go. This link will be in the description. It is a long read. Very interesting read because it gets cross cultures, cross time, it joins so many other aspects. You see that it's whatever the religion, whatever the of the time, there are certain themes that are being carried on in architecture, sacred geometry, sacred architecture, or as is this book called, Naology is another term for it. Some interesting ideas, especially ideas of the time in regards to the pyramids and well, cross time, cross cultures, cross religions. Very, very interesting book. I think it's one of these, along with Strabo or the 10 books of architecture by Vitruvius. It really should be on the top shelf of the digital library or worth printing out because full of information, very relevant information, which gets touched on by the establishment and gets very conveniently ignored by the gatekeepers of the alternative. I've read, yeah, anyway. Link will be in the description. I'll put in Vitruvius and I'll put in Strabo as well. You can just even Google Herodotus as well because, yeah, that's or Plato. These things are selectively used in some instances, and then some very important technical first-person descriptions are excluded from that. And I think that's a crime. That's a sin. Anyway, links in the description. Hope you enjoyed. Have a good one.